Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from Thailand, Mr. Tomas Horejsi. Tomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you. And I appreciate how perfectly you pronounce my name.
Thank you. Tomas is an executive coach and CFO of Tomas Horejsi Financial Empowerment. So let's talk about your journey, Tomas, first. You come from the Czech Republic. You lived in the US and Australia. What was the path that brought you to Thailand?
Thank you, Ashutosh. That's very nice to be with you here. And thanks again for the invitation. And to answer your question, maybe it's a little bit long journey, but to be short, I was always very international. I was working as a CFO for many years in Europe and also in the United States. And about 6 years ago, I realized that I would like to make a change to maybe be a little bit in the more meaningful area and support people around me. And I decided that I would like to take accredited coaching or business leadership coaching. And my idea was really to be that the certification should be really professional and from English speaking country where I have never been. So what I did was that I look at the map and look on the English speaking countries I never been. And then I saw Australia and it was so far. So I was like, okay, so I'll go to Australia. I chose one of the best coaching leadership institute called IECL in Sydney. And long story short, in a couple of weeks, I landed in Sydney and I started to live in Australia and learning the executive and leadership coaching.
Oh, wonderful.
I lived there for some time and then I was traveling to Thailand and then the COVID happened and I had a possibility to choose where I stay. And because my work was pretty online already at the time, and Thailand is a beautiful country in the middle of Europe and also Australia, I decided to stay here and be based here.
Oh, wonderful. And tell me a little bit about the work that you do in the area of financial empowerment as well as a coach.
It's, this finance and coaching, many people say it's not really compatible. It's many coaches have, for example, HR background and this finance and coaching. And what I witnessed for many years, how difficult is it for many people to cope with finance? Like when I was a CFO, I was witnessing my colleagues, non-finance leaders, my bosses, CEOs, and also entrepreneurs. And I realized how good would be to help these people, not from this organizational point of view I was before, because obviously as a CFO, you have your box and you can do something, but it's very hard to go out of your box. But from the position of a leadership executive coach, when you really can go and start to empower people and ask the question what their problems are and to look a little bit deeper. So that was my motivation.
Fantastic. Moving on, how do you help executives improve their organization's finances and become recognized as financially savvy leaders?
That's one of the part of the problem. Many executives, they have this non-finance background, right? If, for example, CEOs, usually they have a sales background or sometimes, let's say, marketing, and not very often they understand finance. And at the moment when they are promoted, let's say, to be a CEO or even like non-finance leaders who are in this marketing, HR area, all of a sudden they are in the situation they need to understand finance. And it's a little bit unspoken problem because it's not good for, let's say, CEO to come to HR department and say, look, I don't really understand finance. Can you get me someone to help me? You know, there you need to be a little bit sensitive and say, look, I know that maybe these people need to some kind of help with finance, but how to tackle it, how to cooperate with these people. And you really you need to create the safe environment for these people, because obviously they are high caliber people, as all these non-finance leaders and CEOs and also entrepreneurs. And it's just not okay to go and say, look, this is income statement, this is assets, liabilities, you need to know, and please tomorrow tell me how you made your assessments. It's not the correct way. So yeah.
And when I was reading the same phrase that I read out to you, how do you define a financially savvy leader?
That's a really good question. I think it's not really about understanding of the financial concept, but it's a little bit more. In my work, I use these three concepts. I call it 3 I's. Like first I is for information, second for interpretation, and third is for implementation. And when leaders needs to be financial savvy, it's not enough to look on the first eye to say information. I need to understand the theory. I need to understand assets, liabilities, balance sheet, income statement, because it's not enough. They also need the second step, which is the interpretation. This basically, if they look on the income statement, what does it mean really? What this information behind? And the third, and that's where the real fun starts, is this implementation. And it's about awareness, self-awareness, communication with CFO, productivity. And this is where we usually uncover these limiting beliefs. Like typical limiting beliefs can be, I don't know, I don't have a brain for finance. If I get $1 for every time I hear this, oh my God, I would be very rich right now.
I agree.
This is what people say. I don't have a brain for finance. And this is actually excellent segue to really start drilling down a little bit deep and where and how this limiting belief was created, and what is it we can do.
And please tell me about it.
It's really interesting because when people start to say it, we usually try to reveal the story behind that. There is always like this, I call it negative or area of concern story, and then maybe there is a preferred story. This area of concern story, sometimes it's a little bit difficult for people to really say out loud, that they have this limiting belief. So I try to externalize, let's say, use some object, let's say a book, and we say, imagine that this book is your limiting belief. What does that book tell about you? And then we start to really externalize these questions. And after some time, we made a small shift into this preferred story. And again, we change this, let's say, book for, I don't know, some music or something beautiful, some picture. And again, we start to talk about this new thing. And this is really powerful. It's called narrative coaching. So we say the new story. And as a result, these people usually change their view dramatically.
Fascinating. And based on all the work that you've been doing with so many corporations, how much understanding of finance is necessary for a corporate leader? And when should they start to acquire this knowledge?
That's the thing, that for everybody is completely different situation. I had a client who was just on board as a new CEO, and he was about to approve the budgets and travel to overseas headquarters and to approve the budget. So the client needed certain kind of help. Then I had another client who was more like, there was not this good communication between him and CFO, and we were tackling this problem. So I think what's very important at the beginning is to diagnose properly that every person is very unique. So what is it that person is? What is the person's pain? Is it like the real foundation? They need to know foundation. Is it a little bit more about communication with CFO? Maybe it's something that CFO, sometimes they know that CEO doesn't understand very well. So there is this discrepancy of communication. Is it something about new challenges in terms of approving new budgets, or maybe board meetings? Everybody is different. So when we do this diagnostic process, after that, we know a little bit more about what the person needs. And then we are able to tailor this coaching or sessions according their needs.
Very interesting. And Tomas, I've often wondered, given all my background in the corporate world, When there are internal training sessions that are done in most large companies, you have people talking of branding, marketing, sales, human resources, information technology. I have never come across an internal program which says, come and learn the 101 of finance. Why is that?
That's really also was puzzling me for a long time. I think one of the reasons is really that many people think that the finance is something very hard. It's very for the finance people who sit somewhere in the corner, and they have this tendency to avoid it a little bit. And another thing is that people usually need a very safe space. When they start to learn something like this, they definitely need one-to-one learning. I mean, it's also okay to have a group learning, like a master class. But when it comes to like senior executives, it's very good to create this safe environment and to really ask very specifically what they need. Because I think the main difference is that the finance is so broad. Many people say finance, but what really does it mean? Is it accounting? Is it tax? Is it controlling? Is it budgeting? Is it cryptocurrency? Everybody considers finance to be something different. So when people say finance, the response is, what kind of finance we talk about? Is it personal finance? Are we talk how to handle your money on your bank account? Is it business finance? Is it startup finance? For example, you need to create a business plan for your new venture. So this is very important to define at the start. So maybe that's one of the reasons, as you said, that maybe that's not so enough one-to-one programs in the big corporations, because I think it really requires this initial period, this diagnostic, and to say, what is it we are going to learn today, or maybe this month, or 3 months, or 6 months, or 12 months.
And, your response gives me an opportunity to ask you my next question, that what is the process you follow to empower non-finance leaders?
I am really keen on that diagnostics, as we say. The diagnostic is clear number one. So firstly, we start with the diagnostic tool. I have prepared some tools for people. It's like a set of simple questions they answer. And as a result of the answer, I'm able to place them into the matrix. It's just the matrix, horizontal and vertical. And we are able to see where they are at the moment in terms of their financial knowledge. And also, I call it financial intelligence. And this is a step number one. And the step number two is say, okay, so where do you want to go from this present situation to where you want to be? And when we have this, we are able to tailor these 3 I's. We are able to say, how much information do you need? Maybe CEO doesn't need to learn so much about, concepts of credits and debits and the accounts and general ledger. But maybe they have a situation, they are challenged on the board meetings, and they should know at least a little bit, some basics. So this is what we say. And then we say how much you need to know in terms of interpretation. So do you need to understand balance sheet? Do you need to understand income statement? Maybe cash flow. Cash flow is very often underestimated, big underestimated report in the big corporations and the companies and also the entrepreneurs. And then the last is the implementation. So what is it? How to cope with the limiting beliefs, how to cope with the awareness and the productivity. So this is basically the process that I follow with my client. And what I want to say, what's very important and very often underestimated is also the review. When we finish, our coaching program or any program, we need to see, did it really bring what was expected? There was maybe some investment, there was some, extra, maybe sales, extra margin. So compare these 2 elements and to calculate this quite often used word ROI, return on investment. And obviously, we need to be very rational, not to present ROI like 5,000%, like what some people do, but really say, there were the costs, there were the incomes. So was it successful program, or how to assess the program?
Very interesting. My next question to you, Tomas, is, when I started working in 1979, the finance function was always hidden away. It was the chief accountant, or it was who became a VP finance. Then you start getting controllers. Today, the CFO is a very, very key part of the leadership team of every company.
Mm.
How do you see the role of the CFO, and why do you think this has become such an important function?
You are absolutely right, because I saw so many cases where the finance team were sitting somewhere in the back office. Usually you can imagine the big layout, and then there was the last corner, and there were sitting people from finance. And I think this is obviously not the correct way. As you say, and what I also think that CFO needs to be a right hand of a CEO. Yeah. We call it, there is this metaphor, which I like very much, that CFO needs to be a co-pilot. If you imagine like the pilots.
Yeah.
So CFO is definitely a co-pilot, not someone who just prepares some reports from time to time, but really a person who is very active and comes to CEO and say, look, we did this maybe investment, and according my maybe calculation, that was good, but there was some problem. Let's try it a little bit different for the next time. So there needs to be like constant, I would say, even like a challenge in the good and positive way, of course, that CFO steps and say, look, this was happening, but I think maybe here we should save some money, or maybe here we can spend a little bit more. And I think CFO should challenge the status quo. It's very easy for companies to be in the status quo and do what we did. I was in the company before as a CFO, and we were giving, we wanted to attract the customers to our retail store. So we were distributing the discount vouchers, that the customer took like 30% vouchers. It was good, but the problem was that people never had any idea if it was beneficial or not. And then when we did the calculation, we found out that this lost margin as a result of the voucher were much higher than the benefit that we brought. But because the company did it for maybe 5 years or so long, so they didn't even realize it could be something wrong about that. So I think big impact of the CFO is really to challenge the status quo.
Very interesting. Let me now move to startups. Every country is now encouraging startups, and there are thousands of startup founders all over the world. How does a startup founder empower herself or himself to understand numbers?
When I was living in Sydney, I was very lucky, and I was teaching at one of these entrepreneurs colleges for young entrepreneurs, and I was absolutely amazed how many bright ideas these people had. They're like fantastic business ideas. But unfortunately, too often they just they didn't succeed, and the result, the reason was that the poor understanding of finance. They had a brilliant plan to implement something, but they didn't have understanding of the finance flow and cash flow and how it works. So in a couple of months, they ran out of cash, for example, or they couldn't proceed. So I think especially in this early stage of entrepreneurships, and it's hard because obviously all entrepreneurs, it's like their baby, right? They have this business idea, and they say, this is what I thought for maybe 5 years, and I strongly believe it's gonna be successful. And there is this element missing, how to be really smart in finance, because then these people obviously one day need to go maybe to venture capitalists or to raise some capital to make an IPO, for example. And obviously they need to be financially savvy. They need to say, look, this is my business plan. This is my projection of revenues for maybe next 3 years. This is my projections of the cost. This is startup cost, and they are different startup costs than normal cost. This is difference between variable cost and fixed costs. All these questions are asked by venture capitalists when people ask to raise a capital. So if entrepreneurs don't know this, they just go this initial enthusiastic phase, which is good. But maybe after 3 or 6 months, they burn out because they don't have enough. They burn all of their cash for already, and they don't have enough. So it's very important.
Fascinating. And my last question to you, Tomas, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your amazing journey as a CFO and as a coach in multiple countries, what would you say are 3 lessons you would like our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and our conversation?
3 lessons. Definitely one lesson is to follow your heart. This is so important. You know, some people call it flow. It's just do what you think is good according to you. Everybody is different. And someone likes maybe finance, someone like marketing, someone has this plan, someone has this maybe career idea. It's so important to be really truthful to yourself. So this is number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, I would say, and this is also in my my motto is one of my motto is to increase financial playgrounds. So I would say generally increase your playgrounds. Never stop working on yourself. Never stop learning. It's hard sometimes to learn something new because it hurts, but the benefit is absolutely unbelievable when we learn something new.
Yeah.
So don't forget to learn something new. And number 3, I would say courage. Take courage. Because it's very easy to be in the comfort zones, and maybe sometimes we tend to, you know, sometimes it's easier to do the things just in front of our maybe computer to type something, but really to get out the comfort zone. Does it mean to go out and to speak in the front of people? Do it. Does it mean to maybe call to a couple of venture capitalists and ask them for the funds, even though there can be a rejection? Just do it. It pays. You know, I think we are creating these, I call it the muscles. When we make something and we will go through, we create our mental muscles, and then we feel much stronger for the next time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Tomas, on that note, thank you for sharing your incredible thoughts with me. Your 3 lessons are very important for all of us, which is follow your heart, increase your playground, which is really don't stop learning. And the third one is have the courage and come out of your comfort zone. Also, thank you for talking to me about your 3 I's, which are information, interpretation, and implementation. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you in everything that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. It was very lovely to be with you, and thank you for inviting me to your session.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.